Hi, friends. My name's Liz Speakman, and welcome to the Liz Speaks podcast. Today, you're going to hear from an interview with Norma Shulman from the Yes on Four campaign, and she's going to talk to us why we should vote yes on four. The fourth ballot question is going to ask voters to decide if people should be able to register to vote on election day. Currently, there's a waiting period of 10 days that one has to register before being able to vote. So you'll hear more from Norma. In the meantime, I wanted to follow up on a couple things that came up in a recent Braintree Democratic Town Committee forum for the Norfolk County District Attorney candidates. I was honored to be able to moderate that forum, and one of the topics that came up was around social media. And I think any of us who have had any interaction with social media know that there can be really hateful, hurtful, disrespectful comments. And it can be really easy to kind of get pulled into that rhetoric. And one of the things that I said during that forum was, that we can all do better and hold ourselves to a higher standard when we're interacting, and that we can remember on the other side of that is a person. And so it may feel really easy just to type out some nasty stuff about somebody, but on the other side of that is a whole human. And the other thing I wanted to talk about was how really this kind of rhetoric is a distraction. And it's meant to get people afraid. It's really meant to drum up fear and anger and resentment. And it's tempting. It can be really tempting to get into a back and forth with people about things that you believe strongly in, especially if they're coming after someone maybe that you care about or that you know well. And you know this person is really just trying to do the best they can, like most of us are. But it's really a distraction and it's noise. And it really keeps us from spending time, energy, and effort in the things that really do matter in our communities. Currently, the city of Quincy has a $2 billion deficit. And we are this fiscal year, we're spending $95 million out of our budget just to pay down some of our debt. We also found out that we have flock cameras that have been set up around the city. I only found that out because it showed up on my Waze app that right around the corner from my house, there's a camera now. But city council didn't know, residents didn't know, no one, from the community got to weigh in on this decision. And then also we have so many families that are being priced out of our communities, whether it's Quincy or our local other communities. People who grow up here can't afford to stay here because the property taxes are really high, the price of housing is really high. And so there's a lot of things I think a lot of us care a lot about. Our public schools being as strong and impactful as they possibly can be. And so when you're sort of scrolling and you see these kind of kooky AI caricatures and racist rhetoric and sexist stuff, I think that it can be hard to resist sort of going down that path and getting into a back and forth with people, or sort of even just thinking about it and focusing on it and taking up time and energy with it. And so what I encourage all of us to do, because I definitely can get pulled into, is let's stay focused. Let's stay really steady and clear on the things that matter, the things that we want to work on, that we care about, that will help us create a stronger, healthier, thriving community that we want to live in. And when you see that kind of nonsense popping up on your feed, just keep going. And remember that any time, any energy, any effort that is put into that is taking away from other things that you could be working on. And we've got work to do in Quincy and our surrounding communities. There's a lot of work that we need to do in order to create the community that we want to have. And so that's my plea, that's my ask, that's my reminder for all of us. And, one of the issues that I think is getting a lot of attention right now, and also came up at the district attorney forum is this theme of mental health and crime. And it's emerging through this horrific tragedy of the Lindsay Clancy trial. Most of you probably have heard, but it's a woman who, 3 children, and through likely postpartum psychosis, um, she killed her children. And so there's so much documented evidence that she was having significant mental health crisis. She went to numerous doctors to psych, trying to get herself inpatient so that she could get better. She tried many different medications that often don't interact well with each other. And she really was desperately trying for help over and over and over again before this tragedy happened. And this system's failed her. That's my analysis. These systems failed her. And the reason it came up in the district attorney forum is because I asked the candidates, how do you determine whether to bring a case for prosecution or not, and whether you believe the solution for this crime is either prison or some other kind of treatment, like a mental health treatment. And the decision made by the Plymouth County DA was the solution for Lindsay Clancy should be prison. And I disagree with that. I think that all the testimony has indicated she loved her kids so much and was trying so hard to get help and just could not get the help that she needed. And she was desperate and she was hearing voices. And that to me is not someone who's going to benefit from being in prison. And so the reason it came up is because we are in Norfolk County. We're faced with a tough decision coming up on September 1st, where we have several candidates, Democratic candidates, running for district attorney. And I think, what we know is that there are a lot of people who commit crimes in the midst of mental health crisis. And so it is a difficult decision for a district attorney to make whether to pursue a pathway of criminal legal charges and potentially prison, and or potentially a pathway, they call it diversion, of mental health treatment, substance use treatment, and other kind of supports around this person. And there's a lot of gray, and there's a lot of discretion that district attorneys have in order to determine which pathway they think was going to be best for this particular person. And so depending on your worldview, your values, your mindset, we could have a district attorney who really disagrees with how you would like to see this legal system function. And so I really just encourage everybody to take a look at, there's been many forums, the Braintree Democratic Town Committee Forum. Um, there's a Women League of Voters forum. I interviewed most of the candidates on this podcast, if you go back and listen to those episodes. But this primary is coming up September 1st. Mail-in voting has already started. Early voting is coming up soon. And so once those candidates are on the ballot for September 1st, whoever wins that day will be going to the November 3rd ballot. Only one Democrat will go to that ballot, and there's not really Republican competition. So whoever wins on September 1st is very likely going to win the general election. And so if you care about this, you care about mental health issues and how it interacts with crime, and you want a district attorney who represents your values and what's important to you, I encourage you to take a look at these candidates and make an informed decision. So up next, we're going to hear from Norma about Election Day voter registration and why we should all vote yes. I'm really excited to have Norma Shulman here with us today. She's a longtime political activist and is here to talk with us about election day registration that's going to be on the ballot. Welcome, Norma.
Thank you very much for inviting me. I'm happy to share this information with your audience. It's important and it's an easy one for people to figure out. It's question number 4. Please vote yes.
Excellent. Thank you so much. So tell us a little bit about yourself and how you got involved in this initiative.
Well, I've been an activist and an organizer for many years. I'm involved with my local Democratic committee. I was a chair many chairs ago, and I'm a member of the Democratic State Committee. I've been involved as a field director for some campaigns and a canvasser and volunteer for many others. Um, going to New Hampshire, knocking on doors, and so on. So lots of different kinds of elections at different levels. And I've been aware that many states, in fact, it's 22 now plus DC, that have either same day or election day voter registration. And I've often heard stories of people who had trouble voting because something went wrong. Either they moved or they didn't know what the deadline was, or there was some error, clerical error somewhere. And I've heard about that. Then I heard Secretary Galvin speak at length of about some of the things he's concerned about, and I was particularly impressed that he mentioned that he really wants to continue doing his work because he's very concerned about the 2030 census. So he spoke for a while at an event, and then he asked for questions. And I said, "Whatever happened to same day registration?" I thought, let's find out where it went. And he said, "I'll get back to you." And he did. Not long after that, he got back to me and he said, "I need 10 signers, the first 10 signers, so that we can take this petition to the Attorney General and see if we can get it on the ballot." So that's how I got involved. I didn't know how involved I was going to be until this starts to unfold, because I have great admiration for people who work on ballot questions. Getting well over 100,000 signatures in total in round one and round two is quite a task. And, there is a lot of discussion now about paid signature gatherers, and that's another interesting thing. But we found some important places to get signatures, like outside of town meetings, where people who are there tend to live in that town and tend to be registered voters. And we've had a couple of town meetings where we got signatures and we filled 15 pages. We went to one actually where there was a really hot item on their warrant, and we filled 18 pages at that one. And
Wow,
so
that's
it takes
amazing.
it takes more than one person at a busy town meeting to get the signatures, because the people are coming at you like a fire hose. And so a lot of work to do. Um,
Great.
so I got involved, and I'm the chair of Yes on Election Day registration. And we do have a website, which I assume you can share with your viewers,
Yep.
which is electiondayvoterregistration.com. And it hasn't been updated since we were getting signatures, but I think people can get the gist of it, particularly the summary. And if you want, I can share the summary if you want me
Well,
to
let's
share it
let's
on
go through the
screen.
rest of the questions and then we'll see
Okay,
if it makes sense to share more of the details that are on there.
right. But they can also read it at the website.
Great.
And the summary is what sold it to a lot of people who weren't sure they wanted to sign it.
Hmm.
I will tell you that I've been getting signatures for nomination papers and petitions for years, and I've never had one which had such a high percentage of positive responses.
Wow.
We get a few people who were not sure or who never want to put their name on anything. And more recently, we had people who thought, well, I don't think if people aren't registered, they should be given another chance. But that's recent. That's recent. And I think there's a lot of opposing talk that
Yeah.
prompted some of that. Um, I don't know. I didn't ask people who said that what candidates they support, but I was guessing.
Yeah, I think we could
Um,
guess.
so, we got something like 97,000 signatures in the first round, and we got over 16,000 in the second round. And in the second round, we had to have 12,429 certified, legitimate signatures, which we did get.
That's great,
So,
Norma. That's an amazing accomplishment. Thank you
right.
so much for all your work on that. One of the questions that I was wondering about is we often hear same day registration or election day registration. Can you
Hmm.
tell us what the difference is between those?
Yes, absolutely. It's very important. It's the same concept, but same day means pretty much any time that you go to the clerk's office or you go for early voting, you should be able to register. We have election day, which is on the actual election day, like the final day that you go to the polls in person. And there are a couple of reasons for it. I can't pretend to know all the backstory of everything, but I can tell you that the difference is highlighted when you hear people say, well, I went to New Hampshire on election day and there were long lines of people registering to vote. That's how they register to vote in New Hampshire. In Massachusetts, we register automatically at the RMV. We register online, which is highly used now. We register by people filling out a paper form in advance, mailing it in person at the clerk's office in advance of the 10-day deadline. There are many ways to register here. So we're catching the 6%, maybe 7% of people in some communities who, because they didn't know that there was a 10-day advance deadline, or they just moved here, or they just turned 18 and didn't know that they could pre-register when they were 16. Or there's a spelling error and their name on the list that the poll workers have doesn't match their name. uh, all kinds of little reasons why a few people might be turned away at the polls. Why should we turn away an eligible voter who has proof, if needed,
Mhm.
when it's their right to vote?
Right.
So, offering them a provisional ballot is not a satisfactory alternative. Sometimes some of the data shows that up to two-thirds of provisional ballots are not used, are not counted. So it's a false sense of security. Oh, I filled out a provisional ballot, and then they find out they're not counted. That
So can you tell me, so currently that's the process, right? If someone goes in to vote and they're not registered, their name isn't correct, their address isn't correct, they're not registered in that town. Are they offered a provisional ballot or what
they
is
should be, although I've seen a lot on social media now. If you're turned away at the polls, ask for a provisional ballot.
okay, so that's a
And
good
have
tip.
have either a driver's license or a utility bill to prove where you live,
Yeah.
or some other proof. But it's a lot of work for the poll workers because they have to verify this, and it's actually less work to allow someone to just fill out the registration form and be registered, not just for that day, but then registered for future elections as well. So it's more um, effective, it's less work, and why shouldn't we let people exercise their rights if they've got the enough interest to show up?
Right. That's yeah. And I mean, we see especially in local elections.
Right. And so we're not talking about long lines. It's often cited as, oh, we shouldn't allow this because I've seen the long lines in New Hampshire. Not true.
Okay.
And
Yeah, I was going to ask
remember,
you, Norma, who would be opposing? It seems like this is the kind of thing a lot of people would support. So who is opposing this?
well, I can tell you that two comments that I get.
Uh-huh.
although I hate to even repeat them. But one of them is if people are too lazy or too ignorant to get it done right, they shouldn't be allowed to vote.
Oh, yikes.
All
Wow.
right. And that's, I mean, I'm telling you, would like to say to them, have you ever made a mistake or forgotten
Right.
something?
Of course. Oh my
Okay.
gosh. How many
Um,
times I've realized 2 months later my car was supposed to be inspected or any of those things trying to keep track
oh,
of in life. It's
goodness, you
hard.
mean you've made a mistake?
I have.
Okay.
Just
All
one
right.
though.
The other kind of comments, and these are rare. Um, the other kind of comments are, oh, it's just another way for people to cheat.
Oh,
So judge the source.
sure.
This
Yep.
is someone who assumes that people will cheat if given the opportunity.
Right.
And in fact, if you read the summary of the petition we used to get this ballot question on, it says that you have to sign a written oath that says you are eligible. Well, actually, the same thing is on the standard voter registration form,
Registration
which
form. Yeah.
most people haven't looked at for 20 years
More,
because
more
they've
than
been
that for me.
registered.
Yeah.
And but it also goes through. They have to be at least 18. They are not prohibited from voting for any other reasons. Uh, and with this one, they have to sign to say, under penalties of perjury, which are severe,
Yeah.
that they will not and have not voted anywhere else in this election. That has to be added for this particular case. So you're going to end up with people who are happy, they're registered, their problem has been solved, they get to vote.
Yep.
And I did read, I learned a lot, by the way, going to the legislative hearing. Once we had our first round of thousands of signatures, there was a legislative hearing where they have three subject matter experts who are neutral in
Mm,
relation to whatever they're being asked to speak about. And Secretary Galvin spoke, I spoke, and then members of the public had up to, I think it was 2 minutes each if they wanted to speak. And there was only one group opposing it,
mm.
and their concern was work and cost to do this.
For
But the
the local
subject matter
municipality.
experts had already spoken and said that it's been shown in the 22 states and DC. It's not more work, it's not more cost. And the other point that I pulled out of one of the testimonies was if you create a voter with a positive experience voting, they're going to be a lifelong voter.
Yeah.
If you create a voter or give a voter a chance to vote and you make it a really negative, punitive kind of experience, they may not want to come back again. And
Absolutely. Yeah,
yeah,
it's like that with most experiences. If there's barriers put up, then it's
right,
going to be much harder to engage people moving
right.
forward. And I did want to also mention
Yeah.
that on the Quincy Votes website, quincyvotes.org, they've partnered with a group called Rock the Vote. And
Mm-hmm.
so you can register to vote on the Quincy Votes website if you go on there and you're not sure if you're registered or if you've changed your address. You can go on there and make sure that you're registered to your correct address. I think
I
we've got a
guess my
friend
my dog wants to vote. I keep doggy treats handy, but
just
I'm
in
not
case.
sure I can get him to come back in here. He's been walking around in the background, but you
He's
may
like,
have
vote
to edit.
yes, vote
If he
yes.
comes back in here, I have a treat ready for him.
Okay.
I'm
Um,
prepared, but I didn't expect him to bark. He's usually quiet. Um, but
well,
yes,
he's a friend of the
there are a lot
podcast.
of places. Our city clerk's page on
Mhm.
our community website has links like register to vote, vote by mail, check your voter registration status, absentee voting, election results, track your mail-in ballot because you can track it. I know my ballot has been mailed to me and actually
Yep,
I have it in hand.
yep,
And once I drop it in the Dropbox, I will be able to track when it's received by the clerk. Um, Also, sample ballots. So your community's town or city election website can provide a lot of information. I tell people if they're not sure whether
Hmm.
their status is active or inactive or they're properly registered at their current address, to just Google check my voter status
Hmm.
MA for
Okay.
Massachusetts,
Yep.
and it will take them to the secretary's website, and they'll click on the link, they'll put in their information, and it tell them not only if they're registered and if it's active, but all the people who represent them.
Oh, that's
So
great. I didn't know that. That's
I
excellent.
hear a lot from people. Framingham has 4 state reps,
Oh, yeah.
and a lot of people have no idea which one is
Is
theirs.
right, of course. Yeah.
And
Yep.
yeah,
Yep.
so
That's great.
talk
Thank you for
about
that
people
resource.
not knowing registration deadlines. They don't even know who their state rep is.
I know. Well, the hard thing is too, that there's so limited, often limited challengers. And so you get to the ballot and there's one name on there, so you don't really pay attention because there's no one else, no other option, to vote for. So I
Mhm.
think in my mind, helping us get more people running might help people to know who is representing them and whether they like what they're doing or not. But I feel like it can be easy to be complicit and just kind of go along with it when there's no competition. So, but I was going to ask you too, Norma. So we have a primary election coming up September 1st, and then the general election November 3rd. I've been telling people who are interested in the county races, especially for us in Norfolk County, where I am in Quincy, that election will be very, very likely decided on September 1st. And so we're really encouraging people to get out to the primary. And the ballot questions will be decided on November 3rd. So can you give us an idea of when people need to register by, when they're going to vote September 1st and they're going to vote November 3rd. So what are the kind of deadlines for that?
Well, the deadline is 10 days in advance of
Okay.
either election, but that means for the primary, it's August 22nd. And according to my city clerk's website, it's 5 p.m. in person
Okay.
because obviously they're going to stay open that day till 5 for the deadline, but 11:59 p.m. online. So if someone goes, "Oh my gosh, I forgot I didn't make it somewhere where I had to register in person," go online and it's easy. Register to vote ma.com is a placeholder that will zoom you over to the secretary's website where you can register. For November 3rd, it's October 24th. Same thing, 5 p.m. in person, 11:59 p.m. online. There are other deadlines that people should understand. For instance, there's a deadline for when you can request a mail in ballot.
Mhm.
Um, and there's a deadline for returning an absentee or mail in ballot. And also, each community will have a location and dates for and hours for early voting.
Mhm. And they
So,
would check their clerk's website to find out the information about early
right,
voting.
right.
Hmm.
And if they're not sure, Google it.
Yeah.
I mean, that's with
Yeah.
a small g. They don't have to use any
Right.
particular search.
Right.
Um,
Search it up on the internet.
right. Right. But I really firmly believe that there's no reason that we don't have a 99% turnout at on elections, and I can't understand why. But I allow the 1% for people who just can't get there or they're sick or something happens. But I just don't understand. And someone said to me, but there's so many people on the ballot, I don't know who to vote for. Fine. Go vote, leave them blank if you have no idea what to do. That's fine
Yeah.
with me, but
Yep.
you should go vote.
Yep. Yep. Absolutely. And I think that was definitely something that I've heard for years in Quincy, and part of why I was interested in starting the civic engagement group, Quincy Votes. And now it's a resource for our county because there's a lot of information on there about this highly contested county race. And so I think anyone in Norfolk County who says, I'm not sure who's running for DA, probably hasn't been paying a ton of attention to things because there's a lot out there, but I think we definitely still need to work on getting more information out about some of the local offices and who's running for those.
Your DA race is a really interesting one. I
It
went to
sure is.
one forum in person and I watched another one online, watched the recording, and people have a really important decision. All right, the dog is back.
And Norma, you don't even live in Norfolk County.
No, but I have friends who
Yeah,
do, and
it's
they were
important.
hosting an event,
Yeah,
so I went.
yeah,
And
that's great.
also, the first one I went to, it was before the signature deadline, so I went there to get signatures too.
Well, very smart, very smart. You're very strategic.
Yeah.
So Norma, we're encouraging everyone to vote yes on Election Day registration. Is there anything else that we haven't covered yet that you think would be important for voters to know?
Yes, actually, I went through all of the written testimony that had been submitted to the legislative hearing.
Mm.
And I found a couple of quotes. Actually, one of them is from a subject matter expert. The three subject matter experts were either lawyers or professors or people really knowledgeable about related issues. And one of them made a statement that the it says H5001, which was the number of the petition that or the bill that the legislature should have grabbed and passed
Mhm.
after our 97,000 signatures. But that person said it was a simple, carefully crafted piece of legislation that is integrated into how Massachusetts currently conducts voter registration, and also noted that it's in the middle of the EDR laws, or election day registration laws, in the country. It's a mainstream proposal and it's popular in Massachusetts. So I thought, well, that seems to sell it pretty
Yeah,
well.
yeah,
So,
that's a
I mean,
win-win.
I listened to these three subject matter experts. It was a total of about an hour of testimony. And while they stated they're neutral, they
Mm.
sold it because
Right,
it was factual, it
right.
was
Yep.
straightforward. And so I think that's an important thing. Um, the other thing that people should know is that when they hear that a clerk isn't happy about this proposal
Hmm.
because they want that 10-day uh, advance deadline so they can have their lists ready for the polls. Well, a lot of the cities and towns now have an electronic list.
Yeah,
And so it's not quite as tight, but not all of them do.
right.
So I will tell you that the secretary really felt that after 15 years of people trying to get the legislature to pass same day, he came up with what someone might describe as a compromise. He doesn't describe it that way, but people have said, oh, this is a compromise. And the fact is that this allows them to have the 10 days in order to get a list ready, whether it's printed or electronic,
Yeah.
but it allows them not to have to bother explaining provisional ballots to people and allowing them to get people actually registered correctly if they need to catch up or update their address. Um,
Hmm.
if someone moves from one precinct to another, they can be turned away. So this is a pretty simple, straightforward, and I'll call it common sense proposal. Um, there are some other things that I learned from the testimony. Um, One organization talked about their constituents who often are either two-parent working families, single parents, people with medical needs or families with medical needs who just are overwhelmed with just life's responsibilities. Why shouldn't we make it easier and more possible for them to exercise their right to vote? There were others that made comments about, uh, for instance, people in cities are more likely to end up getting handed a provisional ballot.
Hmm.
It's
That's interesting.
partly because a lot of people in cities, more people in cities may be renters,
Right.
may
So they're
have
trying to stay.
moved, may
Yeah.
have moved more often, may not know that if they move from one street to the other, it may
Right.
put them in a different district.
Right.
Also, seniors with
Mm,
various, what about a senior who moves into senior housing
right.
or has to move suddenly for medical needs?
Sure.
Um, there were a lot of different organizations that were speaking up in behalf of their constituents and saying why this would be helpful to them.
Yeah.
So my feeling is that if they have to prove who they are, because the summary will say they have to show valid IDs and proof of their address,
Mm-hmm.
and then they become a an eligible voter. They get the privilege and responsibility of voting. Why would we want to deny that?
Right. I mean, one of the things I think about too, Norma, is that there are so many that these populations that you described, there are so many ways that government could make their life a little bit easier that are just complicated and challenging and take a lot of money. Like childcare and universal health care and these
Mhm.
things that are like very complicated and resource heavy, where this is like pretty simple. If there's one small thing government can do to make folks who are struggling in different ways just a tiny bit easier, let's do that thing. We can't always do the big giant things, but when we can do something to move in that direction, then let's do that. Let's make people's lives a little bit easier and a little bit more accessible, make government a little bit more accessible for them. So for me, it's a, I think like you're saying, it's a value statement about what we believe in Massachusetts. Do we believe that government has a responsibility to make itself a little more accessible for people, especially those who have a lot of other challenges going on? And I think Massachusetts does believe in that, and I'm very hopeful and optimistic that this is going to pass. So we're assuming it's going to pass. So what would happen next once it passes?
Well, I'm not actually a total expert on that, except that our summary says that the proposed law would take effect on January 1st, 2028.
Okay,
All
so they would
right.
have time to get everything
I
prepared.
don't know if the legislature has any way to get out of it.
They,
So
yeah,
all I can say to the voters is let's get a huge majority on this so
yeah,
that they will look silly. The organizations that have been supporting same day registration for years, a few of them have not come on board as actively supporting this because they committed to a large coalition of groups
yeah,
that are still with same day. But
sure.
I believe that they are now unwilling to buck this proposal.
Well, I mean,
Actually,
sometimes you got to take a step in that direction, and it's not where you want to be, but hopefully it's moving in the direction where you want to get to.
yeah, actually, I describe it as a backup plan for people.
Mm-hmm.
But there was a better phrase used in a statement from the Massachusetts Town Clerks Association in 2021 and 2022. So it's not current. In other words, it isn't in response to this particular petition, but they supported election day registration as a safety net for those who miss the deadline, and it's more manageable for election officials. So, and they assume that the appropriate safeguards will be implemented by the secretary. And I
Right.
can assure you, anyone who
Yep.
knows Secretary Galvin knows that he's all business.
That's right. He's going to make sure nothing slips through the cracks and everything
Right,
is done the proper way. Yeah.
right.
Well,
So
thank you so much, Norma. We'll definitely include a link to these resources in our description so folks can click on those and get more information. And I know that you've been really leading this, but you don't have a whole team behind you. You don't have millions of dollars behind you. But if there is someone out there who says, you know what, this is something I want to help out with, what would you suggest for them?
I have a couple of suggestions. If anyone needs more information, there's a an email on the website. So it's info at and then the address of the website. All
Okay.
right. So they can contact them and it'll probably be one of us, um, who says, "What can you do?" I'm
Yeah.
also getting a lot of requests for. You're the first on the podcasts,
All right.
but I'm getting requests from town committees and others who are putting together forums. And what I would ask of anyone is to talk to any organizations they're involved in, whether they're political or not, and make sure that everyone they know um, knows that this ballot question number 4 is pretty straightforward. Some of them are pretty controversial,
Yes.
but I'm unaware of any organized no group.
Yep.
We're
Yeah.
the yes group. And so I would say to people, post on your social media, vote yes on question 4, Election Day voter registration. Share it with your local groups, your book club,
hmm
your exercise class. Make sure that if you're a member of something like an election related organization, that your organization endorses question
hmm
4.
Yep.
If we have every town and ward committee endorsing it, they can even be Republican.
Absolutely. I
Okay.
mean, everyone, I think most people agree that the right to vote is a basic right that we should all support in some way. So
Right.
it does feel nonpartisan to me too.
So I mean I'm on some text banks and phone banks for candidates, and when
hmm
people say, "Oh, I really love that candidate,
hmm
but I just don't have time to volunteer," I tell them you can be an unofficial volunteer. Just
hmm
tell a few family members and
Absolutely.
some friends and neighbors
Yep.
to be
Yep.
sure and vote. And I'm talking to people about the primary, where, like your DA race, where you have a contest.
hmm
And I say, remember to vote on September 1st. Your vote will count in the primary. That's going to decide the likely person to
Yeah.
take that seat. So on question 4, I would say just remind people that even if they don't see a lot of contests on a ballot, go and vote on November 3rd and vote yes on question 4.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Norma. I know how busy you are, and I just really appreciate you taking the time to chat with me ahead of time and then today. And I know we'll be keeping in touch and how I can support question 4 because I agree that it's really important and it's a no-brainer. It's common sense, so I think Massachusetts can make it happen. So thank you so much, Norma.
Well, thank you for asking.